Do you hear that, baseball fans? Do you hear that? It's quiet out there. Too quiet.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they call it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page. Leave comments there. I read it way too often. And when you leave a comment, make sure to leave that hashtag EverydaySully. It helps us find the comments, and we put them on the show, especially when we go to the trivia question. The trivia question from the other day when we did the whole wrap-up of the regular season was, what are the only three franchises to have never won a home World Series game? Last week, we remembered that the Minnesota Twins have never won a road playoff game as the Twins. They lost all the road games in their three trips in the World Series from Minnesota, 65, 87, and 91. But what are the three franchises who have never won a home World Series game? And Gavin D. Luhash 2994 got it correct. They are the Washington Nationals, the franchise that was also known as the Montreal Expos, the Colorado Rockies, and the Seattle Mariners. Now, the Nationals, that franchise that began in Montreal, became the Washington Nationals, have won one pennant. One. It was the 2019 World Series. And they did a reverse of what the Twins did in 87 and 91, and a reverse of what the Arizona Diamondbacks did in 2001. Those teams all won all their home games and lost all their road games. In 91, it was the opposite. The Nationals won the World Series, but every game from both squads were won by the visiting team. The first two games, the Nationals stunned the Astros, back-to-back game in Houston, went back to Washington, and the Astros ran the table, going back to Houston, needing just one more win. But Steven Strasburg and Juan Soto and Howie Kendrick had other ideas. And so did A.J. Hinch, the manager of the Astros, who said, do you want the season's on the line? Why don't I warm up Garrett Cole and not use him? And so, yes, the Nationals have never won a home playoff game. The Rockies also never won a home playoff game, a home World Series game. The Rockies have also never won a home World Series game. They have won one pennant, the 2007 pennant, the Rocktober pennant. And in that World Series against the Red Sox, they got swept. Now, to be fair, the Rockies played the Red Sox pretty tough in two of the games. Two of the games turned out to be one-run games. But in the end, it was a sweeperino. And then there's the Seattle Mariners, the team that has never made it to the World Series. So obviously they never won a home game. So yes, those are the three franchises who have never won a home World Series game. So I'm dropping this one on Monday afternoon. There are no games being played on Monday, and the postseason begins on Tuesday afternoon. And this is a thankless task, of course, to make predictions. But you know what the hell? I'm going to do it anyway. We've got a bunch of teams in here. At the beginning of the year, I picked the World Series to be the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Texas Rangers. Phillies turned out to be a pretty decent pick. The Rangers, they had the lowest ERA in the American League and a Hall of Fame manager running the joint. So all they had to be was a mediocre offensive team, and they would have been a playoff team. And that's so surreal to me because growing up, the Rangers could always hit because they played outdoors in the heat in Texas. But they always had players, whether it was Richie Zisk, whether it was Al Oliver, whether it was later they had a great group of hitters led by Ruben Sierra and Julio Franco. And then later they had the great Juan Gonzalez and Rusty Greer and Rafael Palmeiro and Dean Palmer. And then when they went to the World Series in the early 2010s, they would have, Nelson Cruz and Josh Hamilton were pounding the way. They always could hit, but it was the pitching that always fell apart because they were in the sweltering heat. And now we're living in bizarro world. But no team in Texas made it to the postseason. A lot of people who hate the Astros are quite thrilled by that. And Astro fans, you have to understand, there's going to be at least a generation that is always going to revel in your misery. Met fans are on the outside looking in. And you know what? It looked really good in the offseason. The Mets won the offseason. The key is to win the season. So here we are. We're going to start the wild card series on Tuesday. The Dodgers are playing the Reds. The Padres are playing the Cubs. Guardians are playing the Tigers. And the Yankees are playing Boston. And that's the first round that starts up. I'm going to make my picks. My picks are the Dodgers are going to be playing the Reds. And I actually think that's going to be a closer series than some people think. The Reds can pitch. That is true. And the Reds have a much better bullpen than the Dodgers do right now. And I think the Reds are going to win a game. I do. I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think they're going to hold their own. They also have Tito Francona right there. Terry Francona. You know what I'm talking about. But his former Red Sox hero, Dave Roberts, is on the other side. And do you know what? In my humble opinion, Dave Roberts answered a lot of questions about him as a manager, about how he handled things last year, how he handled things based on, the fact that he had to play entire series with bullpen games. He was able to make it work. I think there's too much star power on this Dodger team. And in the end, I think it will go to a game 3. I do think the Reds will squeeze out a win. But in the end, I think the Dodgers will power their way to a trip to the division series. It would be interesting if the Reds defeated the Dodgers and all the people complaining that the Dodgers and Mets make everything so unfair. All the Reds have to do is win 2 games, and they will have sunk both the Mets and the Dodgers. The other series is going to be the Padres versus the Cubs. The Cubs are a very good team. They've got good pitching. They've got good hitting. And they're playing at home. They have a good manager. And I think they've been underrated. And I think the Padres are better. And I think the Padres are going to win that 2-0. Don't hate me, Cub fans. I'm just making my predictions. And you'll see that I'm being impartial. In the American League Wild Card Series, the Cleveland Guardians are going to be playing the Detroit Tigers. And the Tigers have been in a free fall, a Wile E. Coyote-like free fall. From the moment they humiliated the Yankees, they haven't been able to do anything right. And I think they're playing, they're going to pitch Tarek Skubal in game 1. And I don't think that phases Cleveland at all. They beat them in the playoffs last year. They beat them in the series earlier this month. The game's going to be in Cleveland. I think Detroit's a little bit on their heels. And I think Cleveland's going to win that series 2-1. And here is the proof that I'm making predictions based upon what I think will happen, not what I want to happen. I'm a native New Englander. I make no bones of the fact that I grew up a Boston Red Sox fan. And the Red Sox have played the Yankees very, very well this year. And they have a huge weapon in game 1 in Garrett Crochet, who is, if he's not going to win the Cy Young Award, and I don't think he will. I think he's going to go to Skubal. But boy, oh boy, he's going to get some votes. And he's pitched very well against the New York Yankees. Thank you very much. And I think that the Red Sox are going to win game 1. But the Yankees are on a roll right now. The key is to keep them in the ballpark. And I think Crochet will keep them in the ballpark. And I don't think the other pitchers will. And I think Carlos Rodon is pitching very well. I think it will come down to a game 3. Hate to say it, and I'm not saying it to jinx them. I'm just making my prediction. I think the Yankees are going to win game 3. So I think the wild card series are going to be the Dodgers over the Reds, the Padres over the Cubs, the Guardians over the Tigers, and the Yankees beating the Red Sox. But what does that mean going forward? Well, when we come back, I'm going to make my way too early to make predictions for the other series. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, and I'm thinking about going to one of the playoff games in Los Angeles. The energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But you know what? Actually getting tickets, that's the tough part. You got the long lines, the login screens, the surprise fees. It takes all the fun out of it. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets, and they're delivered on time and at the right price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And you cannot have a more simple app for buying your tickets. You can see the exact view from the seat before you buy, and you know the total up front. There's no surprise fees. And now for me, zone deals, that's the best. At Dodger Stadium, I like to sit in not the upper deck, not the lower deck, but the middle deck, a little bit up the first base line. That's the best view in the whole stadium. So I pick the zone. Game Time gets the best seat and the best deal, and you save big. It's faster, it's cheaper, and it's less stressful than any other ways you bought tickets. So guess what? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go to Game Time today. Hey, have you ever felt like you weren't in control of your money? I feel that way all the time. Now, some people can't even name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, And when you don't have the full pictures, you could end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money is so great. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch Money. It's built for people with busy lives. I have 3 jobs. And if you're putting off organizing your finances, you know what? Monarch's for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link your accounts in just minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. If you could identify that you aren't saving as much as you thought, Monarch helps you notice inefficient investment allocation. Say that 3 times fast and discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Okay, let's go to the division series. The Phillies are going to be playing the Dodgers. The star power in that series is going to be off the charts. And if Zach Wheeler was pitching for Philadelphia, that'd be even better. However, I do think one team is better than the other. I think the Phillies are better than the Dodgers. And I also, excuse me, I scratched my nose. I think the Phillies fixed their bullpen, and I don't think the Dodgers did. And I think the Phillies are going to bust through the Dodgers' shaky bullpen. I think they can pitch with them. I think they can hit with them. If Schwarber gets on a roll and Harper continues to get some big hits, I think the Phillies are going to defeat the World Series champion Dodgers and end their bid to be the first team since the Big Red Machine of 1975 and 76 to be the first National League team to win back-to-back. By the way, keep in mind, there hasn't been a back-to-back World Series champion from the National League since before the free agency era. Just keep that in mind. Every single year, you're going to have you had back-to-back champions from the Yankees in the era of free agency, 77, 78 with the Yankees. You had 92 and 93 with the Blue Jays. And then you had the three-peat by the Yankees in the 90s. And that's it. For the people who say free agency means it's the same teams winning every year, you're being factually untrue. Stop it. Stop it. And we've had, 19 different pennant winners in the last 20 years? I'll get to that in a second. But I do think the Dodgers, who some people thought it was unfair that they're just going to stampede to another World Series title, I don't think they're going to make it out of the division series because they'll line up with Philadelphia, and that's the worst team to line them up with. The Milwaukee Brewers, I have facing the San Diego Padres. I think the Padres are going to make quick work of the Cubs, and I think the Brewers are going to make quick work of the Padres. I think the Brewers are just a better team up and down, fundamentally and everything. And I predict the Milwaukee Brewers will sweep the San Diego Padres and forcing a showdown in the NLCS. I do have an upset in terms of a team that is a wild card team defeating a division title in the American League Division Series, and that would be the Yankees. The Yankees lining up with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think the Yankees right now are better than the Toronto Blue Jays, even though the Blue Jays won the division. I have the Yankees winning that series in 4. And by the way, Red Sox fans, that's one of the reasons why winning that first game with Crochet and trying to split the next 2, I think the Red Sox would beat the Blue Jays as well. I think the Blue Jays are, who knows, they could go on a run. They could relax after this run they've had, but I think they're beatable. That's why whoever wins that Yankee-Red Sox Wild Card series has a pretty clear road to the American League Championship Series. Meanwhile, Seattle versus the Cleveland Guardians. And the Guardians can win. The Guardians are clutch. The Guardians are a great story. And I think the Mariners are better. I think the Mariners can pitch better. I think the Mariners have an explosive offense. I just like how the Mariners are playing. And I have that being a terrific series going down best of 5. I have that going 5. But that means my National League Championship Series is the Phillies and the Brewers. And my ALCS are the Mariners and the Yankees. And the Brewers play great fundamental defense. The Brewers have a great bullpen, this, that, and the other thing. I think the Phillies are going to top them. I think head-to-head, I think the Phillies are going to take on the Brewers and beat them in 6 and march to the World Series. Meanwhile, in the ALCS, I think the Yankees will meet their match. I like Seattle. Even though the Yankees have gone on a rampage, I think Seattle's a little better right now. I think they'll be able to keep Stanton and Judge in the yard. I think they'll be able to pitch with them. I think they'll be able to pitch with their bullpen. I think they'll be able to get some of the big hits. And I have the Mariners defeating the Yankees in 5. So what does that mean? I have the World Series between the Philadelphia Phillies and, for the first time ever, the Seattle Mariners. And I think it'll be a good series. I think it'll be a star power series. The Phillies are looking to win a title and justify a lot of things and know that their window of opportunity may not be as open as late as they would want. And the Mariners have many, many great years ahead of them. So who do I pick? I'm sticking with my preseason pick. I have the Philadelphia Phillies defeating the Seattle Mariners 4-2. And, of course, all this could mean piddly-poo. All this could be a disaster. I picked the Phillies to win the World Series last year. A few years ago, I thought the Milwaukee Brewers were going to the World Series. So my predictions can be very wrong. But those are the picks I'm making. I don't think the Red Sox are going to get far. It's coming from a native New Englander. I think the Yankees are going to go all the way to the ALCS, but I think they'll be punched in the mouth by the Pacific Northwest. And I think this is going to be Philly's year. And yeah, you have Philadelphia who's going to have, in my prediction, a Super Bowl champion and a World Series champion within the same 12 months. Will that make them happy? I don't know. Not a lot of things do. But the fact of the matter, those are my picks. And when we come back, we're not going to look forward. We're going to look a little bit back because we're going to take the final look at Who Won Baseball and the summer score. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 back in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5. It hits, you unlock 300 tomatoes in bonus bets across the app. You know, no matter how you do your betting, whether it's, your parlays you build up, your player props, you do the live lines during the game, FanDuel has you covered. It makes football even more exciting because it gives you a little something riding on each game. Now, whether you're a casual fan like I am or you're just diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the football game day so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and download the FanDuel app today and get started. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-new Locked On MLB game night, every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Will I be correct? Will it be Philadelphia or will it be the Yankees? Will the Dodgers just rampage again? Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. By the way, this is how you know I'm not just making picks based on what I want. I have the Yankees beating the Red Sox. I also have the Dodgers not making it to the NLCS. Well, what does that mean, Sully? If the Dodgers make it to the NLCS, I have tickets for Game 4, assuming they'll be the road team, that they would be playing Milwaukee. Game 4, I have tickets. So therefore, I'm going to be rooting for the Dodgers. Not necessarily because I'm a Dodger fan, but I want to go to one more game this year. Part of my day getting prepped and doing all this other stuff in my life is I start my day or sometimes end my day by figuring out who owned baseball. And that's the metric that I keep based upon who had the best night in the American League and National League as a pitcher and a hitter. The best player for that night on a winning team gets 1 wob, and the best player on a losing team gets half a wob. And I've been doing that for a few years, and I've had to do some tweaks and everything along the way, but I think it's a good system for me. And it's interesting that the results of who owned baseball tend to kind of sort of reflect the real awards. And so I'm going to give you the top 3 as the season is over. Now I'm going to do who owned October. That's a woo. And eventually who owned October is combined with who owned the World Series, which is wow. So we'll get woo and wows in October. And we'll see who is the big postseason heroes. And they tend to lean towards relievers these days because starting pitchers don't go as deep in the postseason games as they used to. However, let's just take a quick peek at the final tallies of who owned baseball for 2025. And I'm going to read the top 3 in all 4 categories. In terms of the American League batters, we had a tie for second place. Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins and Cal Raleigh of the Seattle Mariners, who many people think is going to win the MVP. I think he's going to win it as well. Not necessarily has my vote, but that's who I would be picking, think is going to win. They both finished tied with 8. Who had the highest wob? That would be Aaron Judge. So Aaron Judge led the league in wob with a 10.5 tally. And that means any games where he had the best day. For a losing game, he would get half a point. For a winning game, but a full point. He finished with a 10.5 tally. Byron Buxton and Cal Raleigh each finished with 8. So my tally includes the 2 presumptive MVP candidates, Judge and Raleigh. Does Buxton rank that high in the MVP can? I'm not sure. But my little system has Judge and Raleigh right at the top. In terms of the National League MVP, you have tied for second place. You have Pete Alonso with 7 and Seiya Suzuki also with 7. So I think Schwarber was at 4th place with 6.5, just barely missed that cut. And who led the National League batters in wob? That would be Shohei Ohtani with 9.5. So if I'm using this to gauge my MVPs, I would have Judge and Ohtani. Now, I think it's going to be Raleigh and Ohtani, but Judge is going to get a lot of votes. My system works, folks. My system works. Now, in terms of the pitchers, in terms of American League pitchers, in 3rd place was Kevin Gausman with 9. 2nd place, Tarek Skubal with 10, and just barely inching past him, winning the top spot for American League pitchers for wob, Garrett Crochet of the Red Sox, 10.5. Now, I think Tarek Skubal is going to win the Cy Young Award, but I think Crochet is going to come a close second. I think Gausman's going to be up there too. So once again, my crazy method gives us probably the true top 3 candidates. And in terms of the National League pitchers in wob, tied for second would be Zach Wheeler, who's having a wonderful season before he got injured, and Nick Pivetta, who had a terrific year himself. And what pitcher in the National League had the highest wob? Paul Skeens of the Pittsburgh Pirates. So if you just used my method, the MVPs would be Judge and Ohtani, and the Cy Young Award winners would be Crochet and Paul Skeens. Now, I would vote for Skubal, and you can make a case for Raleigh. but it's a pretty accurate assessment of the situation, in my very humble opinion. Now, one thing that I did throughout the year, and by the way, my mornings are going to get a lot less stressful now that I don't have to do this every day. But another tally that I did was the summer score. And this is the tally that I did starting on Memorial Day, because I don't think you can look at the standings before Memorial Day. But starting Memorial Day, I keep a tally for the number of days a team is in a playoff spot. You wake up on any day after Memorial Day, you check the standings. Oh, our team's a playoff team. And the team that has the best time staying in a playoff spot over the year gets a higher summer score. And it's weighted. It's weighted because the excitement that you would feel for your team in the summer in a playoff spot is going to be greater the later you get in the year, the closer you get to the end of the year. If you're in first place in May, that doesn't have the same excitement being in first place in September. Just ask Met fans. However, I worked on this and I did a tally, and I found out something interesting. First of all, the lowest tallies we had belonged to the Arizona Diamondbacks, who finished with a score of 4. Because in September, you get 1 point for each day. You're only 1 game out of a playoff spot. So they finished with a score of 4. In the National League, in the American League, the lowest scores were the Rangers, who only made the summer score a couple of days in July, and they were 1 game out in September. And the Kansas City Royals, who were in a playoff spot 1 day in May and were 1 game out pair of days in September. So those are the ones who are on the fringe. The Minnesota Twins, by the way, finished with a summer score of 20. They were a playoff team as late as mid-June. At the end of the trade deadline, they traded everything but the statue of Kirby Puckett. Now, here's what I find interesting. The Diamondbacks had the lowest summer score of any National League team. Do you know what team had the second lowest summer score? The Reds. The Reds finished with a score of 20. They didn't get onto the summer score tally until late September, which is technically not even summer anymore. So they finished with a tally of 20. And that's surreal because that's the second lowest score in the National League, and yet they're a playoff team. For almost the entire year, they were also ran, but or kind of on the periphery, and they got to clinch a spot. The Giants and the Cardinals both tallied some summer score points, 45 for the Giants, 25 for the Cardinals, and were on the outside looking in. In the American League, as I mentioned, the Twins, the Rangers, and the Royals all got tallies, as did the Tampa Bay Rays. The Guardians made the postseason with a summer score of 50. They were a playoff team up until late June and then fell out of it. And then, like the Reds, came back with a vengeance in late September. Tampa Bay, by the way, has a summer score of 53 because from early June to mid-July, they were a wild card team. And oh boy, we missed out the chance to see playoff games in a minor league stadium. Now, a perfect summer score, being in a playoff spot from the day after Memorial Day to the end, is 307. The Tigers got a perfect summer score. The Yankees got a perfect summer score. The Cubs, Dodgers, and Phillies all got perfect summer scores. The Mets had a perfect summer score until the final day of the season. They finished at 303 and missed the playoffs altogether. And the Houston Astros finished with a summer score of 287 and missed the playoffs altogether. The summer score is cruel, but it also shows if you're a Houston fan or if you're a Met fan, you had a frustrating end, but at least an entertaining summer, which in the end is the main purpose of a baseball team, is to give you entertainment in the summer. Now, those left over get to have fun in the fall, and that starts in less than 12 hours. So we're going to have fun. We're going to have fun watching some Major League Baseball playoff games starting tomorrow. And it's going to bring us to the trivia question. Who is the first eventual Hall of Famer to hit a walk-off postseason home run? Tommy Hendrick was the first person to ever hit a walk-off home run in the World Series, and that's all the postseason they had back then. He's not in the Hall of Fame. Who was the first person who would eventually go on to be elected to the Hall of Fame to hit a walk-off postseason home run? Put your answers right down here in the box and on YouTube or wherever you want to send it to me at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. If you want to send it to me at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, you do all those different places. Talking about my picks for the postseason and the final tally for Who Owned Baseball and the summer score. And I humbly apologize to Philadelphia fans everywhere for picking your team because I'm not exactly a good luck charm. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.